Imagine waking up every day carrying an invisible weight, trying to appear strong while inside everything is crumbling. What if I told you there's a simple, scientific, and transformative technique capable of restoring your strength even on your worst days? Amy Cuddy, one of the world's most respected researchers, reveals the secret to feeling powerful even when you're broken inside. It's not magic. It's not empty motivation. It's deep psychology applied to your body and mind. And the most surprising thing is that anyone can use it today, right now, even if they don't yet have much self-confidence. If you want to learn how to rebuild your confidence from the inside out, understand how small changes can reprogram your emotions, and discover how to regain your power even in moments of weakness, then don't leave this video. Subscribe to the channel to receive content that truly changes your life, and leave a comment so I know you're with me on this journey of strength and transformation. The day everything inside you falls apart. The day everything falls apart is rarely an ordinary day. It doesn't warn you, it doesn't prepare you, and it doesn't respect your emotional state. For Amy Cuddy, that day represented the moment when the entire structure she believed she had built crumbled all at once. It wasn't just the loss of something material or a one-off disappointment. It was the profound feeling of having lost her own inner balance, as if her mind were being crushed by a nameless weight. And the most surprising thing is that, at that exact breaking point, she discovered something she never imagined existed, something that only arises in the midst of absolute chaos. At first, the emotional impact was silent. There was no explosion, no scream, no rage. What there was a kind of emptiness difficult to explain, as if the life force had been drained, leaving only a body trying to function on autopilot. This is the kind of moment when the mind begins to produce destructive thoughts, those that whisper that you are not capable, that you are not ready, that you shouldn't be there. It's as if all your worth is put on trial and you are condemned before you can even defend yourself. The feeling of weakness seems so real that it becomes almost tangible. Internal chaos intensifies because the mind tries to find a logical justification for the suffering. And when it doesn't find one, it creates explanations that hurt you even more. Self-criticism turns into attack, and attack turns into despair. It was precisely within this emotional spiral that Amy realized something fundamental. The pain wasn't just pain, it was a trigger, a warning, a sign that something inside her needed to be rebuilt, but not in the same format, not with the same beliefs, not with the same rigidity. The discovery that changed everything didn't come from a sudden epiphany, but from a simple gesture. A gesture so small that normally no one would pay attention. Before sinking completely, she realized she still had control over one thing, her own body. Even though her mind was broken, even though her emotions were collapsing, she could still decide how to position herself in the face of that chaos. And that realization was like finding a secret door in a windowless room. From that point on, something began to change. Not because the problems disappeared, but because body language became a kind of anchor. Posture ceased to be merely an emotional reflex and became an instrument. Instead of hunching her back, shrugging her shoulders, and hiding, she decided to position herself in a more open, firmer, more present way. At first, it seemed artificial, almost ridiculous. How could someone feel better just by changing their body position? However, the body is not just a physical detail. It is a direct transmitter of messages to the brain. Gradually, this simple gesture began to change her internal rhythm. Each breath became more stable. Each small change in posture lessened the emotional weight a little. The chaos still existed, but now there was something that could pierce through it. She realized that the body can be a shield when the mind is wounded, and, at the same time, a portal to regain strength when everything seems lost. It's as if the body tells the brain that there is still life, that there is still a chance, that it is still possible to rise again. This was the true power discovered in chaos. Not a mystical power, not an extraordinary revelation, but the clear feeling that even when everything collapses, you can still choose how you position yourself in life. And this choice, however small it may seem, begins to create a new emotional foundation. A foundation that grows slowly but truly grows. This is the strength that is born when the inner world is in ruins, and you decide, even without energy, to realign yourself. The secret is understanding that feeling broken inside doesn't mean you're defeated. It means you're going through a silent reconstruction. And it's in this reconstruction that the body becomes the first brick. From there, the mind follows, the emotion follows, life goes on. Because, in the end, it's always in chaos that the deepest power reveals itself. How your body reveals strength, even when your mind weakens. The way you position yourself in the world reveals more about you than any words you try to say. Even if you are calm, broken, confident, or insecure inside, your body always reveals the truth before your mind admits it. Posture is not just a set of automatic movements. It is a direct reflection of what you believe about yourself, how you see the world, and, above all, the value you think you have. The curious thing is that this doesn't happen just so others notice something. Posture is also a silent message you send to your own brain, a code it interprets as strength or weakness, courage or fear, openness or withdrawal. When the body closes up, when the shoulders slump, when the head lowers, when the chest seems to shrink, something internal also retracts. Without realizing it, you activate the same mechanism in the brain used in threatening situations. It reduces your sense of control, triggers negative thoughts, and increases self-criticism. It's as if every inch of contraction is a silent sentence that you're not ready, not strong enough, not in control of your own life. The mind begins to follow the body as if it were the leader of the internal conversation. On the other hand, when the body opens up, when posture aligns, when the chest expands, something changes immediately. It's not just about looking more confident. It's about informing the brain that you have space to exist, that you are allowed to occupy the environment, that you don't need to shrink to fit in. Expansive postures send direct signals to brain regions responsible for decision-making, courage, and clarity. That's why a simple change in the way you stand, sit, or walk already creates a completely different emotional state, even if nothing around you has changed. Posture is also a living memory of everything you've ever experienced. It holds reactions that you've repeated for years without realizing it. Difficult situations, rejections, old fears, comparisons, and failures can mold the body into a constant defensive posture. Over time, this becomes so automatic that it seems part of your identity, as if it were simply who you are. But in reality, it's just a learned pattern, a conditioned reflex that remains active even after the danger has passed. It's like carrying heavy armor that no longer makes sense, but that you wear because you've become accustomed to the weight. At the same time, posture is a kind of social signal. People around you pick up on your presence before they hear your voice. The human brain is trained to interpret micro-expressions and body language adjustments in fractions of a second. Without you saying anything, you already convey whether you are confident, receptive, decisive, anxious, or lost. This influences how people respond to you, how they treat you, and even how they assess your credibility. It's not about appearance, but about the energy transmitted through your body structure. When you understand this mechanism, you realize that controlling your posture is not falsehood, nor exaggeration, nor theatrics. It's a tool for emotional self-regulation. By adjusting your body, you create a different dialogue with your mind. A firm and aligned posture doesn't erase pain, fear, or fatigue, but it reorganizes how you face them. It interrupts the cycle of negative thoughts and opens space for a new sense of inner power to emerge. You begin to feel something that many never truly experience: the feeling of controlling your own emotional state. Posture also influences breathing, which in turn alters internal chemistry. When you slouch, your lungs work at a reduced capacity, oxygenation decreases, and the brain interprets this as a sign of safety. Conversely, when you straighten up, respiratory flow improves, and the body interprets this as a signal of safety. This simple adjustment changes how you react, think, and make decisions. Therefore, often the first step in regaining emotional strength doesn't come from a positive thought, but from a simple movement of the chest and shoulders. Over time, this new body pattern becomes natural. The body learns, the mind learns, and the two begin to work together. Aligned posture doesn't just communicate strength. It creates strength. It teaches the brain to operate in a more lucid, calmer, and more powerful state. And it's at this point that you understand the secret. Your posture doesn't shout to the world who you are. It shouts who you are determined to become, why the present moment is stronger than your pain. The present moment is a force that most people underestimate because we are conditioned to believe that our emotional pain stems from the now. But, in reality, what hurts is not the present, but rather everything that the mind drags from the past or everything it projects into the future. When you fully focus your attention on the present moment, you realize that pain is rarely happening exactly in this second. Pain lives in memories, expectations, the scenarios you imagine, the judgments you mentally repeat. The present, however simple it may seem, is a clean space where the mind finds much less material to suffer. Imagine for a moment what happens when you're trapped in thoughts about something that went wrong, someone who hurt you, or an opportunity you missed. Your body reacts as if it were all happening again, even if it occurred years ago. The mind is able to relive the scene with such intensity that your body responds with tension, shortness of breath, worry, and a feeling of threat. But if you examine your surroundings during that instant, you'll see that nothing is really happening. You are sitting, breathing, safe. This contrast shows the difference between mentally created pain and the concrete reality of the present moment. And that's the secret. Emotional pain isn't born in the present, it's carried into it. Emotional science explains that the human brain has a natural tendency to fixate on what hurts, because this was useful for survival. But today, this tendency makes you relive pains that have already ended or suffer over problems that don't even exist yet. When you bring your attention completely to the present, this mental structure loses fuel. It tries to continue, but notice what happens. When you observe your breathing, feel the temperature of your skin, perceive the contact of your feet with the ground, all that internal storm begins to lose strength. It's not magic, it's basic neuroscience. Total attention reduces the mental space available for intrusive thoughts, and the body begins to stabilize. The present is stronger than pain because it is concrete. It doesn't depend on distorted memories or terrified predictions. It simply is. The breath you feel, the air that goes in and out, the weight of your body where you are now, the sound that enters your ears, all of this is real. And reality is often much less threatening than what is imagined. When you anchor yourself in the present, there is a silent awareness that you are not in danger, that nothing is crushing you at this very moment. Pain loses control because it only exists intensely within a mind too preoccupied with what cannot be changed or with what has not yet happened. The power of the present moment is also revealed when you observe that all negative feelings have a cycle. They arise, grow, reach a peak, and then diminish. However, when you remain stuck in the past or the future, you continue to feed the pain, preventing it from completing its natural cycle. Presence interrupts this feeding. When you take a deep breath and return to the present moment, you cut off the flow of thoughts that amplified the suffering. The pain then follows its normal cycle. It appears, but does not dominate. It exists, but does not control. The present does not eliminate the pain instantly, but it prevents it from growing without limit. Another powerful point is that the present moment gives back the control you think you've lost. Emotional pain is often accompanied by the feeling that nothing can be done. However, when you focus your energy on the now, you begin to notice small choices you can still make, small actions that are still within your reach. Perhaps you can't change a past event, but you can change your breathing. Perhaps you can't predict the future, but you can adjust your posture. Small acts in the present build a sense of real power because they happen in a territory where you can actually act. Unlike mental pain, the present is a space where you can influence something, and it is this influence that creates inner strength. There is also a deeper aspect. The present is the only place where you truly exist. You don't live in the past, you remember it. You don't live in the future, you imagine it. Only in the now is there life. And when you truly connect with this space, you realize that most of the inner pain is formed by stories that the mind creates, repeats, and reinforces. When you observe the present attentively, you realize that many of these stories don't have the power they seem to have. They were only powerful because they were being fueled by constant attention. The present moment is stronger than your pain because it diminishes the distance between what you feel and what is real. It restores your stability, breath, clarity, and perspective. It interrupts the mental avalanche and puts you back in the only place where you can truly rebuild yourself. Pain lives in memories and fears. Strength lives in the now. When you access the present with awareness, pain loses its hold. And even if you are broken inside, the now offers you the first brick to begin to rise. The secret weapon to trick the brain and unlock self-confidence. The secret weapon to trick the brain and unlock self-confidence begins with something so simple that most people ignore it. How you occupy the space around you. Even before you think, your body is already telling your brain what to feel. Incredibly, the brain doesn't perfectly distinguish between what is real and what is interpreted. And it is precisely this gap that allows you to use your body as a command to activate emotions that don't yet exist naturally. Instead of waiting to feel confident before acting, you act first so that the brain produces the confidence later. When a person adopts a closed posture, with hunched shoulders, downcast head, and reduced movements, the brain interprets this as a threat or weakness. It releases hormones linked to fear, stress, and feelings of inadequacy. Therefore, in moments of insecurity, it seems the body freezes and the mind repeats thoughts of doubt. This vicious cycle occurs because the body sends a negative signal and the brain responds with another negative signal, reinforcing the initial emotion. The secret lies in breaking this cycle before it gains strength. When you change how you position yourself, the brain receives completely different information. Expansive, stable, firm positions that occupy more space activate brain areas related to feelings of control and authority. It's not magic or cheap self-deception, but pure physiology. The body expands, breathing deepens, the chest opens, and the brain interprets this gesture as a state of strength. The internal chemistry changes without you having said a single word. It's like pressing a button that the brain recognizes as a power command. The secret weapon isn't simply putting your hands on your hips or artificially raising your chest. It's maintaining a posture that communicates to your brain that you're not shrinking from the world. Holding this posture for a few minutes causes the mind to shift its focus. The feeling of inadequacy diminishes, thoughts become organized, and courage appears in small signs, such as stabilizing breathing or gradually returning clarity. This process happens because the body stops transmitting alertness and begins to transmit stability. It's important to understand that this method doesn't require high self-esteem, positive thinking, or motivation. It works even when you don't believe in yourself. The brain responds to the body before it responds to the words you say to yourself. This means that by changing your body, you create an opening that allows the brain to access emotions that seemed inaccessible minutes before. It's the reverse of the traditional approach, where you wait to feel confident before acting. Here, you act so that the brain produces confidence. The impact of this technique becomes more profound as you practice. Each time you use your body as a tool, the brain registers that state as something more familiar. Over time, the confident posture ceases to be just an exercise and becomes a natural pattern. Self-confidence, which previously seemed distant, begins to emerge more easily because the brain learns to interpret that way of positioning yourself as your default identity. It's not a momentary trick, it's internal communication training. This secret weapon works because it respects human nature. Since ancient times, the body has always been the first to react to the environment. The brain depends on these physical responses to know how to behave emotionally. Posture acts as a silent code that you send to yourself. When this code says strength, the brain generates strength. When it says fear, the brain produces fear. The great revelation is that you have the power to choose which code to send. By mastering this technique, you stop being a hostage to the emotions of the moment and gain control over your inner state. Even when you are broken inside or facing negative thoughts, your body can be the first step in reorganizing your mind. It doesn't solve everything, but it opens the way for you to think better, act with more clarity, and face what previously seemed impossible. The secret weapon is always with you. Just remember that your body is the first command, and your mind is the response. Facing yourself, even when you want to hide. Facing yourself, even when you want to hide, is one of the most silent and, at the same time, most profound battles anyone faces. It's that moment when something inside you tries to disappear, to run away, to fade away completely, because admitting what you're feeling seems too painful. This moment manifests itself in various ways. Sometimes you avoid looking in the mirror. Other times, you avoid thinking about your own choices. In some cases, you try to keep yourself busy all the time, as if the constant movement prevents the mind from facing what really matters. But the truth is that no one can run away from themselves forever. The more you try to hide from yourself, the greater the feeling of internal weight grows, as if you were carrying an emotional suitcase that is never opened, but which becomes heavier every day. Facing yourself requires courage because it means looking at emotions you'd rather ignore. Fear, insecurity, regret, shame, feelings of failure, the list is long. But the key point is that these emotions don't disappear when ignored. They simply reorganize themselves within you, finding ways to escape, whether in your body, mood, sleep, energy, or even relationships. And that's why, even when it seems impossible, the act of facing yourself becomes an inevitable step towards regaining inner control. There are times when you feel like your identity is fragmented, as if there's a wounded, hurt, tired version of you, and another trying to keep everything functioning. The journey of facing yourself begins when you decide to allow these parts to communicate. It's not a pretty or romantic process. Most of the time, it's uncomfortable. You find yourself questioning decisions, acknowledging mistakes, admitting that you were trying to appear strong while breaking down inside. This recognition hurts because it strips you bare, removes layers you've used as protection for years. But, paradoxically, it's this profound honesty that opens space for real strength to emerge. When you finally stand before the mirror, whether literally or metaphorically, and observe that tired expression, that look that reveals more than you'd like, something happens. You realize you're still there. Despite the falls, the fears, the losses, and the doubts, There's an inner presence that endures. It's this presence that you try to hide when you feel you're not enough, but it won't go away. It's just waiting for you to be ready to acknowledge it again. Facing yourself also involves accepting that it's okay not to be okay all the time. Modern culture pressures you to constantly appear strong, productive, confident, flawless. Therefore, when you feel you don't meet these standards, the urge to hide arises. But facing yourself means abandoning that illusion. It means admitting that vulnerability exists, but that it doesn't diminish your worth. In fact, acknowledging your vulnerability without running away is one of the most powerful attitudes you can have. And then comes the most important point. Facing yourself isn't about judging yourself. It's about understanding yourself. It's about paying attention to internal tensions, to the thoughts you try to sweep under the rug, to the emotions you suppress to appear stronger. When you allow these feelings to surface, you create space to understand them. And when you understand your emotions, you regain autonomy over them. You stop being a hostage to what you don't want to feel and become someone who chooses how to respond to each experience. Facing yourself, even when you want to hide, is an act of rescue. It's the moment you stop being your own silent enemy and become your own ally. It's the instant the truth you fear transforms into the bridge to the strength you seek. And when you do this, even little by little, something powerful moves within you. Clarity returns, energy returns, the feeling of belonging to yourself returns. And even if the world outside continues to demand a lot from you, inside, you begin to recover what you should never have left behind: the ability to be with yourself without fear. How to overcome imposter syndrome before it devours you. How to overcome imposter syndrome before it devours you begins, first, by understanding that this enemy doesn't appear suddenly. It grows silently within you, like a whisper that becomes a voice and, if not confronted, becomes a scream. It emerges in moments when you achieve something important, and, instead of feeling pride, you fear that others will discover you don't deserve it. Imposter syndrome doesn't feed on your incompetence, but on your inability to see your own worth. And that's precisely why it becomes so dangerous. It attacks when you are vulnerable, when you compare yourself to others, when you believe your victories were just luck or coincidence. This is the perfect breeding ground for it to thrive. Mastering this inner force requires you to observe what it does to your thoughts. It distorts your memory, makes you ignore every skill you've spent years developing. It makes you forget the obstacles you've overcome. It makes you doubt every step you've taken so far. And when you believe in this distorted version of yourself, you begin to sabotage yourself. You refuse opportunities, diminish your plans, hide, avoid risks, limit yourself, all because you believe in an idea that was never true. Imposter syndrome is not a sign of weakness, but a reflection of the fear of not meeting expectations, whether your own or those of others. It grows whenever you seek external validation to confirm your own worth, as if your existence needed the world's approval to be legitimate. Mastering this feeling requires emotional courage to look inward without filters. It's not a comfortable process because you have to confront thoughts you've tried to avoid for years. But that's precisely where the turning point lies. When you begin to identify the pattern, you realize that the imposter isn't a truth about you, but an interpretation created by your insecurity. Every time you tell yourself you don't deserve something, you're just repeating an old narrative built in moments when you were vulnerable. A narrative that has never been questioned. And when it's not questioned, it becomes law in your head, even if it's false. To conquer this enemy, you need to become an observer of your own thoughts. You need to notice when doubt arises and ask yourself where it came from. You need to recognize that the voice that tells you you're not enough isn't yours. It's fear speaking. And fear, however great it may seem, has no authority to define who you are. Every time you interrupt this internal narrative and confront it with reality, you weaken the imposter. Little by little, you realize that much of the pressure you feel doesn't come from the world, but from impossible standards you yourself have created. You demand perfection, speed, immediate results from yourself. And when you don't achieve that, you condemn yourself. But nobody wins by being perfect. Victorious people are those who persevere even when they feel imperfect. The most powerful step in this process is recognizing your achievements without diminishing them. This isn't about arrogance, but about honesty. You didn't get where you are by accident. You didn't learn what you know by luck. There's effort, discipline, setbacks, challenges. There's history. There's evolution. The imposter tries to make you forget this, but you must remember. Mastering imposter syndrome means remembering, every day, that your worth doesn't depend on external approval. It depends on your willingness to keep growing, even when afraid. It depends on your ability to act even when insecure. It depends on your courage to see yourself truthfully, and not through the distorted lens of extreme self-criticism. And finally, mastering this feeling means accepting that doubt is not the enemy. It only indicates that you are leaving your comfort zone. True defeat doesn't come from doubting yourself, but from allowing doubt to paralyze your steps. The inner imposter only has power when you believe it's real, when you face it head-on, when you reject its lies, when you remind yourself of each victory, each effort, each evolution. It loses its strength. At that moment, you stop being haunted by the feeling of not being good enough and begin to assume the role of protagonist of your own story. That's how you master the inner imposter before it devours you, by making awareness your weapon, courage your shield, and truth your liberation. When the world doesn't believe in you, and you need to believe in it yourself. When the world doesn't believe in you, something very profound happens within the human mind. It's as if a door silently closes, a door that once led to confidence, to hope, to the feeling that anything was possible. Suddenly, that door is locked, and you find yourself outside, trying to convince not only others, but yourself, that it's still worth continuing. This is one of the most dangerous and, at the same time, most decisive moments in life. Because when nobody believes in you, the responsibility of sustaining your own emotional existence falls entirely on your shoulders. It is at this moment that a strength is born that most people never discover, because almost nobody is willing to truly confront it. The ability to believe in yourself, even when everything points in the opposite direction. The first impact of this lack of external support is always moral. You feel the weight of accumulated doubts, not only your own, but those that others project onto you. The look of distrust, the silence that should be encouragement and turns into indifference, the veiled comments that hurt more than any direct criticism. The mind begins to repeat these voices until they seem like your own. And this is the most dangerous point, because when you internalize the disbelief of others, you begin to diminish your own brilliance without realizing it. But there is something powerful that emerges at that exact moment, something that few people realize. Every time someone underestimates you, the world is offering you the opportunity to discover how far your determination can go without any support. The truth is, believing alone isn't a romantic, inspiring, or beautiful act. It's exhausting. It's lonely. It's confusing. It requires an emotional discipline that you often don't even imagine you possess. Believing alone means getting up on days when nothing seems to make sense, persisting when your body is exhausted and your mind is begging you to give up, continuing even without seeing immediate results. It's a silent battle fought deep within the soul, where no one sees, no one recognizes, no one applauds. And it's precisely this lack of spectators that transforms the process into a real test of strength. When you act without applause, you discover who you truly are. Over time, something begins to change. This silent persistence creates a kind of emotional muscle, something invisible, but as real as any physical strength. You realize that, however much the world doubts you, it doesn't control your steps. It can make things difficult. It can delay you. It can hurt you, but it cannot stop you from moving forward. From that point on, your confidence ceases to depend on external validation and becomes an internal pact, almost sacred, between you and your own essence. You begin to understand that believing alone is not just about surviving. It's about building an indestructible identity. And why does this matter so much? Because, sooner or later, everyone faces a moment when there's no one to encourage, support, or push them. And it's at that moment that most people crumble because they've sought support from the outside for too long. When you learn to believe in yourself, you become free. Free from others, expectations, free from the limitations placed upon you, free from the fear of not living up to expectations. Your inner belief becomes your only real measure. And when you reach that emotional maturity, something surprising happens. The world finally begins to see what you already knew about yourself. But at that point, its opinion no longer matters. Believing in yourself, in the end, is a training in emotional independence. It's learning to be your own foundation when everything crumbles around you. It's holding your own hand when no one else will. It's walking even without seeing the path. It's trusting that, even broken, you remain whole inside. And when you master this skill, you realize that the world doubting you was never the problem. The real battle has always been preventing yourself from doubting yourself. If this video made you see your own strength in a different way, then don't let it end here. Subscribe to the channel to continue receiving content that uplifts your mind, strengthens your emotions, and transforms your daily life. And now I want to hear from you. Which part resonated with you the most? Leave your comment below. Your opinion not only helps the channel but also inspires other people who are on the same path. Let's grow together.